The James Bond Firstlight presentation was good, concerning and confusing all at once. Now, don't get me wrong, there was plenty to love about our first proper look at Bond, and IO Interactive have the pedigree, what with the Hitman series under their belt. But here's the thing, a lot of YouTube influencers jumped in with their hot takes, and yeah, I nodded along with them at first. Then I proper studied the trailer myself, and I sort of clocked what was happening here. It was all down to the order the presentation actually played out, because when you sit through those final 10 minutes or so where the gameplay features are actually explained, you start thinking this might actually be alright. So put the kettle on, grab a cuppa, and let's have a proper mass debate about the Firstlight trailer. The video today is split into 5 chapters, the way in which I saw the presentation break down. You've got the gameplay mechanics, the infiltration scene, the car chase, the combat, and finally the plane section. And we're starting with the gameplay mechanics, which turned up 25 minutes into a 35-minute showcase. Massive miss that, if you ask me. It's a bit like saving foreplay till after you've already blown your load. Sure, technically you could do it, but it's backwards, messy, and no one's getting full value. This should have come right up front, hand in hand with the reveal of Patrick Gibson, our new Bond. The man strolls out looking sharp as anything, introduces himself, and suddenly my other half is paying more attention to gaming than she ever has done before. Either way, once they finally got going, things were explained nicely. First up, multiple ways to finish a mission, straight out of the Hitman playbook. They give the example of Bond posing as a photographer, but how you actually get his camera, well, that's on you. Nick it off some poor sod who needs to spew up, or take it from multiple locations dotted around the map. Now, I won't lie, that is going to be huge for replayability, because earlier on in the trailer I caught myself thinking, am I really going to be playing this driving section wank all over again? At times when watching it, it sort of reminds you of that one night stand that you're not sure you'd bother with again. Thankfully, stealth also has some of that multiple choice. You can ping a dart in someone's gob and watch them leg it to do a shit, or you can charm your way past with a smile and a fake name, or sod all that and go full Jackie Chan, breaking bones and then breaking door locks to prevent patrols. So yeah, there is a sandbox lurking in here. Trouble is, by burying it so far back in the presentation, they made the whole thing look more linear than it probably is. A lot of punters might have switched off before the best bit. Next up is Bond's gadgets. Now, we didn't get mountains of detail here, but they at least tried to explain the hand holding. Now, I'm going to say it, I'm a big fan of Mac from Worth a Buy. Bloke's got a cracking little song about X-ray vision, and he's bang on. Most devs use it as a cheap way to spoon feed you utter nonsense. Half the time it's not stealth, it's just plain wall hacks. But here, IO at least tried to justify it. James Bond's watch apparently has some sonar wank setting that lets you see through walls, and most interestingly, your gadgets aren't infinite. They burn energy, topped up by these cells that you have to find littered about the place. It's a small twist, but I'll take it, because if any franchise gets a free pass on silly gadgets, well, it's James bloody Bond. This is the man who's had exploding pens, rockets that spew out of an Aston Martin, and a bloody jetpack. So a smartwatch that pings through walls? Fine. The issue here then is timing again. They shoved this reveal so late that the earlier portion ended up feeling a bit transactional, like, here's your magical eyesight lads, there's the points of interest, now bugger off and go do it. And that perhaps is the biggest thing that was missing for me in this early trailer, is that Bond, of all things, should have flair and spontaneous smarts, not predefined and these little planned moments. They could have just shown those last 10 minutes, and I personally think it would have caused just as much hype. Either way, let's get to the rest of it, because for me, the opening drive and infiltration section was easily the weakest chunk of the whole trailer. Some of it felt forced, like the slow panning across the landscape. Yeah, it looked alright, but it didn't exactly blow my socks off either. A bit like when the missus comes home from shopping and shows you that new cushion she bought. Technically nice, but also I don't give a shit. What I did like though was the camera work, that lovely tracking shot to the back left of the car, keeping the whole scene flowing. A nice little touch, and more games should nick it to keep the driving sections feel more grounded. It also gave us a look at the metallic paint detail, which straight away told me First Light is going heavy on graphical polish, even if optimization throughout the trailer has you worried, but more on that part later. But then comes the nonsense, the actual infiltration into the building, even by Bond standards, is a bit of a stretch. Given the supposed high security around this place, your way in is basically climbing a wall in broad daylight, dressed head to toe in black, with a shed load of people milling about, which is as subtle as a fart in a sauna. Of course, someone would have clocked you, and to even get there, you're nicking a lighter and setting fire to a conveniently placed hay barrel. Honestly, lads, it felt weak, not James Bond at all, more like sneaking into the local centre for the blind because no one had a bloody Scooby, you were even there. If this is MI6 standard procedure, I'm starting to think my nan could pass field training. What did make me go all gooey though was the interiors, absolutely chock full of detail and some lovely little modelling work going on here. The wood panelling was quite lush actually, the light pouring through the windows and bouncing off the floor looks bloody gorgeous, and even the rug detail was spot on. You can tell some poor sod spent months staring at carpet fibres to nail that pattern, and it continues to carry that quality to the wide shot of the hall, and it's properly impressive stuff. And then you've got the NPCs swanning about in their finest gear. Could easily be a high class swinger party if you squinted, but no, it's most likely a gathering of cartoon villains plotting world domination. I will say the bar scene wobbled a bit for me though. Whipping out that magical X-ray eyesight right there did undercut the mood a bit, but we've covered that already, so fine, I'll give it a pass. Then we hit the next big set piece, the car chase. And yeah, it ticks most of the boxes. Physics, check. Classic Bond energy, check. A few flashy set pieces that belong straight in one of the movies, yeah, they're all there. But it all felt a bit forced if you ask me. The car sort of handles strangely, like it actually speeds up mid-turn, almost as if the game itself is trying to suck your Aston Martin in, like Riley Reid is attached to the bonnet. It's not exactly what I want from a cornering mechanic, but whatever, I guess. And then there's this weird blur slapped on the license plate, like the devs went a bit too heavy with the most hated graphic option in all of mankind, and this is one example of it. Graphically overall though, I will say it does look rather nice. My real gripe though, it reeked of being one of those can't foul chase sections that you get in gaming. No matter what you do, the target car will magically pop back up in front of you. It feels less like a tense pursuit and more like being pulled along on a guided tour, and because of that it drags. You're basically just along for the ride until the game decides it's time to stop. For me it ended up a bit drab gameplay wise, especially given its length, and yes, that's what she said, but I get it. Each mission's likely going to sprinkle in those big action beats alongside the infiltration stuff. Then we get into the combat / gunplay, and yeah, people are already calling it Uncharted-like. And I can't really argue with that, to be fair, but it still carries a bit of that Bond flavour. I did love the little Easter eggs, like this little scene here, which is arguably the Bond logo, of course. Also the little guitar riffs that sort of signify the Bond that we all know. This part of the demo was really about showing off destructible environments, and fair play. The gunplay looks and sounds meaty, and the physics certainly were showboating their way about. It looked a bit too easy maybe, but satisfying enough. What killed it for me was the bright red fuel barrels, completely broke immersion. Like, cheers lads, I'd never have guessed which one explodes without you painting it like Rudolph's bloody nose. And explosions themselves, well, apparently Bond is immune. You can see a tanker go off like a small nuke, henchmen going brown bread, and yet 007 strolls around like he's off to pick up a pint of milk. The hand-to-hand stuff though, it looked really tidy. Crunchy animations, some nice choreography. Shame the rest of the enemies just stand around watching like it's Fight Club. I get it, probably done for a clean demo, but hopefully it's less everyone politely waits their turn and more scrappy chaos in the final build. And yeah, realism takes a back seat. Bond lobbing a shotgun at some bloke's head made me spit my tea out. It looked ridiculous, but sod it, this is Bond, a franchise where a man once surfed CGI waves in a tux. Suspend disbelief a bit, have a laugh, and enjoy the fireworks, people. What I can't ignore in this though is the optimization, and I'm torn on it. On one hand, yeah, there's work to be done here. You can see dips under 30 frames per second, and that's never a good look. On PC it's less of a panic, but console players might be in for a rougher ride than Bond with a stirred martini. But the flip side is this: IO were confident enough to show us this build, warts and all. That tells me that they believe it will smooth out before release. Otherwise, why risk the embarrassment? Why show the world a picture of your shit staring back at you? It's a ballsy move what they did here, and I kinda respect it. Still, if it does launch in this state, we're staring down the barrel of another cyberpunk situation. Hyped to hell, gorgeous in places, but running like a three-legged dog. And that optimization issue really reared its ugly head in the plane sequence. On paper, it's a cracking set piece, proper Nathan Drake stuff. Bond flying through the air, dodging debris, clawing at a parachute, big, loud and cinematic. But it was the bit before that was actually more interesting to me. You get control of the plane itself, tilting it left and right to send loose cargo sliding about and smashing into enemies. It's a clever little twist that. Shame it ran like arse on the PS5 Pro. And yes, the tilt physics don't seem to bother Bond much. Everyone else goes flying across the fuselage while 007 is standing firm like he's glued his shoes to the floor. Again, it fed into this nagging theme I've noticed throughout the entirety of the presentation. Spectacular set pieces, but maybe a bit too spoon-fed and maybe even a little hollow in places. Still, as a scene, it worked, and stepping back from the quieter beginnings of the mission all the way to the high action crescendo, the pacing here, it was really well done. If they can nail that balance across the other missions, this could shape up into something proper tasty. Overall then, I came away pretty impressed. Don't get me wrong, I've got my concerns like the rest of you. It's not just the optimization here. Some bits of gameplay looked a little flat, combat seemed a bit too easy, and I do worry about the replayability. If it's all this scripted, it won't have that same Hitman magic where you can play a mission 5 different ways and still find something new. But most importantly, I am intrigued, and I'll be watching this one closely because, let's be honest lads, we haven't had a proper Bond game since GoldenEye, and that's far too long for one of gaming's most criminally underused franchises. I really do want this one to succeed. So please, IO, next time you put a trailer together, give us the context stuff earlier. The best bits here were buried at the end. Take a note from Bond himself. Introduce yourself properly with the ending, because remember, it's Bond, James Bond after all. Until next time, my lovelies, love to you all. Reggie out.